There it goes. Okay. So for those of you who are watching the recording, you can see the Adam Hamilton recording. We'll have it by this recording so you can watch it. So watch that first before we move on with the class. So what resonated with you? Is there anything that resonated with you that Adam Hamilton said? Did you find a touch point in anything that he said?
Yes, I was watching television last night, and they had the meeting of Bishop Tutu and Dalai Lama, and how your faith comes from inside. And so they were talking about joy.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking, well, yeah, it's not what's around you, but your feeling and your faith comes from that. And so I think that's part of what Adam Hamilton was saying there.
Exactly. From inside. Yes, from inside. That's correct. And I think the analogy of music is really good because music comes from inside. I mean, you don't have to know, it's weird, you don't have to know music. You don't have to know how to play. You don't have to know a single note. You don't have to know A from E to enjoy music because it strikes something within you. Something resonates within you. I mean, you have to be able to play a note or sing a note, but you can love music because you respond to it emotionally and in every other way. It does something, it resonates. And I think that that's such a great analogy for him to use. Anybody else? Yeah, Liz, go ahead.
I was thinking, you just said responding to music and response. I think that's mostly, as Christians, what we do is have a faith, have a belief, a common belief. That's one part of it, but the second part is to respond to that belief, to respond to the faith that we profess.
Very good, very good. Anybody else? Anybody else? You know, one of the things that he said, which I, again, found myself responding to, was that he said, you know, what science says, or at least what some science says, that the universe has no direction. But that's not true, because the arrow, I learned, you know, about the arrow of time. And the universe is expanding, and that's why you can't go back in time. Time, the arrow of time always moves forward. It is physics. It is cosmology. It does have a direction. It may not have an east, west, north, south direction, but it is expanding. It has direction, and we are a part of that. That's where time comes from. So yes, it does have a direction. So the universe does have recognizable characteristics of that which we celebrate as God. And we, as part of creation, we find ourselves in it. So as far as your perceptions of God, how did you come to believe what you believe about God? How did you come to your belief about God? Now again, understanding that belief is always a struggle. Belief is never just a natural thing. But as far as you're believing in God, how did you come to that belief? Go ahead, Cheyenne.
I think for me, my story is my mom left when I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't see her for a bunch, but I was raised by my grandparents. And my grandmother was very sick. She was in bed all the time. She had very little heart function left, but she lived 10 years after I was born. But I shared a bed with her in a room, but we would, we'd say the Lord's Prayer,
Mm-hmm.
we'd say the 23rd Psalm.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was it. I mean, I just was conditioned that way.
Yeah.
And we didn't go to church, you know. She was too sick to go to church. I went to church sometimes with a neighbor.
Yes.
Like that,
Yeah.
and she was my favorite person for sure in my life. But yeah, I guess that's why.
It's that remarkable thing, and I see that in children here in the church. They resonate, they respond to this when maybe nobody in their family responds at all. Maybe nobody around them does, but they do. It's almost miraculous. I mean, some of you may know that my wife Amy was raised in a family that was basically unchurched. And I mean, she had her grandmother who influenced her. She had a housekeeper that took her to their church. It was an African-American church in New Jersey. And she is a minister. She felt a call in her life. So it's remarkable how we resonate with this. And what I find also remarkable is that, he talked about the age we are in, where God is being challenged at every corner. Not that that's not new, but what I have found that's different these days is that children reach the age of 8 or 9 or 10 and say, I don't want to believe anymore. And they tell their parents that. And the parents don't know why. These are church parents. And they don't know how to respond to this. They really struggle with this. And that's because of the influence of, talk about the influence of religion, but this is the influence of anti-religion, okay, that's upon them.
I was thinking when my grandson was into the Star Wars and stuff, and they always say, may the fourth be with you. And he said, that's just like, may God be with you. And I said, it's kind of funny how people copy Christianity a lot.
Yes.
But the thing is, too, that people, church or unchurched, they crave for that sense. And so, saying, may the fourth, I have friends that are in their 70s, and that would be their parting remark, may the fourth be with you, because they don't want to confess that they're believing in something bigger, but and they're done with their Christianity, but they still need that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the interest, if popular culture reflects what people are passionate about or interested in or scared of or whatever, you look at all the apocalyptic stuff that's out there. I mean, you look at things like, The Last of Us, which is about the end of the world, Zombies. They're not zombies in The Last of Us. It's this fungus. There is a fungus among us, right? That kind of thing. But you see The Last of Us. That's just one example of the way that thinking about the end times permeates the culture. And there's all kind of language like that permeates the culture. So I find that fascinating. Let's take a look real quick. Our time is kind of short, but let's take a look on our page 1, where we look at God. We see some basics about who God is. And let's go down in Exodus 3, 1 through 15 on page 2. Let's go down to that last paragraph, okay? And Adam Hamilton has a point to make about this, asking us to look at this. But Moses said to God, if I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. He said further, thus you shall say to the Israelite, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, thus you shall say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my title for all generations. Of course, they translated, the Hebrew means Yahweh. And Yahweh is, for Judaism, the name of God, right? And so why would God answer in such an odd way to Moses? What's the point that's being made there? I am. Not I'm the God of water, I'm the God of rain, I'm the God of lightning, thunder, war. And that's how God's reviewed, the God of fertility. But to Moses, he said, I am. What does that, why did God say that? What is that about, do you think?
Maybe that's I exist.
I exist. Very good. I think that's exactly what else does it say except that? You can't get anything else out of that. I exist. That is what you need to know. And when you exist, and I am also means I am everything. You can't make an idol out of me. You can't make a little statue of me as the God of war with, thunderbolts in my hand and set me on your shelf. because I'm the God of everything. So you have to go deeper to know who I am. You have to know deep. You have to go much deeper to know who I am. You can't categorize me, because how do you categorize God? Furthermore, how do you categorize your own creator? How do you categorize the creator of the universe? You can't. It's something beyond our comprehension. Now go to Acts 17, the next page, page 3, when Paul stands before the Areopagus, which was in Athens, which was an open forum where all the statues of the gods were kind of in a circle. And that was a place of debate, right? And you would debate philosophy, right? And all kinds of things. And religion and all these other things. And there was one statue to an unknown God. And Paul saw this. And this is what Paul said. This second paragraph. Then Paul stood in front of the Areopagus and said, Athenians, I see how extremely religious you are in every way. For as I went through the city and looked carefully at the objects of your worship, I found among them an altar with the inscription, to an unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, he who is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by human hands, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mortals life and breath and all things. From one ancestor he made all nations to inhabit the whole earth, and he allotted the times of their existence and the boundaries of the places where they would live, so that they would search for God and perhaps grope for him and find him, though indeed he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we too are his offspring. When he says, in him we live and move and have our being, he's quoting a philosopher, a Greek philosopher. He's quoting something they would understand immediately. So, for Paul, what is Paul trying to say to these about this statue to the unknown God? What is Paul basically saying when he speaks to them about this statue?
I think the unknown that we all experience, and they acknowledge it. My understanding is that the reason they put that there was because they didn't want to risk offending a God that they hadn't quite figured out yet. And yet, as Paul says...
But Paul jumped right on that.
But, and in a sense, that's all you can't know fully. You can't fully comprehend.
But what he is saying to them is, there is a revealed God. There is a revealed God that you have not yet met. And this is the God, the true God, the one God. And in him we live, we move and have our being. So he is expanding they had a concept of God. It wasn't, but it was a very, like I said, more of a philosophical concept of like the prime mover, the first mover, and all kind of different types of images. But he said there's a revealed God who's a living God, who's someone you can directly relate to. So that covers both Exodus and Acts, covers two of the basic same things that we understand about God. I am, existence of God, and I reveal myself. I have revealed myself, okay? And then you go back, starting with the history of revealing to Moses all the way through, and then the ultimate revelation being, of course, Jesus Christ. So, Hamilton, what do you think about the illustration of the cake? What did you think about the illustration of the cake?
I like that.
Why? Tell me why.
Because, I think sometimes even though I feel like I'm a very faithful person, I do, there's always something that says, well, what if it's
Of course, yeah.
And I'm like, I push it away.
Yeah.
But that's I think it's a good analogy. I like that about the cake.
Right. And one of the things that Emil Hamilton says he believes is that natural selection, that is evolution, reveals God's existence. It shows us God because natural selection is an order of things. It shows a creative order of things. And that reflects an intelligence movement, a movement of intelligence. And so that to him has meaning to it. What in creation seems particularly godlike to you when you think about it? Okay, somebody said that the earth is round. But of course there are people that believe the earth is flat and do everything they can to prove it, and they believe it with all their hearts. So, I mean, that shows you the something that feels so obvious about the universe. Anything can be denied by anyone, right? Anything can be denied by anyone. The most obvious things. What in nature reveals God to you? Opens your eyes to God?
Two things for me.
Okay.
One is noticing the care that people and animals have for each other, or even humans have for plants. You know, the care and love that is shown. And then the other thing is our conscience.
Our conscience, yes. Yes, our conscience. Very good. Anything else about, yes, go ahead,
I
Liz.
think a lot of people respond to the beauty of nature and music, as you mentioned. And then they don't like the inner city. They think that God's not there.
Right.
And I mean, I love the chaos, the unattractiveness sometimes, because I think that's where God is the most present.
I mean, the whole story of Genesis is God entering into chaos and creating out of it, creating out of chaos. And that's a real message right there, that God is in chaos. Exactly correct. Very good. Anything else, Cheyenne?
I think for me, the oceans, I mean. And
The ocean, very good.
You know, the creatures, how they each have their part. I think about those fish with the lanterns, and they in the very dark, and they can see where they're going because they have a natural phosphorescent. I mean, there's a lot of things, and you just think,
Yeah.
wow, I mean, everything seems to have a purpose, and under heaven, you know, like we talk about. And
Yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of amazing things in the world.
And let's look at Psalm 8 on page 3 at the bottom. Let's listen to Psalm 8, because here Adam Hamilton wants us to connect kind of natural selection, this idea of creation reflecting God in this psalm. Our Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouths of babes and infants you have founded a bulwark because of your foes, to silence the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established. What are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals that you care for them. Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands and have put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Let's go down to Psalm 19, 1 through 4, right below. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. Isn't that an amazing poetic statement? Day to day speaks to us. Night to night gives us knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In the heavens, God has set a tent for the sun. I thought that was, quite a remarkable. These are two remarkable passages on the glory of God, and it reminds us that we are being spoken to and revealed to every day. I mean, there is, and as we look deeper and deeper into space, more opens up to us and more is revealed. And the universe becomes even more wondrous. And yet at the same time, belief in God, as we know, can be fraught with uncertainty. I mean, there is this sense of, is this for real? I mean, is this, okay, I see all this, feels like there's something there, as someone said, but is there really? Is there really? And Hamilton says, well, can a cake bake itself? And those are pretty basic arguments in regards to creation and evolution, but we get a little bit more specific than that as well. If you look at, I want to look at one more passage here. Well, if we look at Psalm 90, and I'm not going to do that. Belief in God as creator, Adam Hamilton points this out, as both creator and father, adds an additional layer of meaning to our place in creation. A footnote points out that while God transcends gender, in this study, Hamilton uses the language of the creed to describe God. How do you respond to this kind of exclusive male language? Are there descriptors beyond the word father that you might choose to expand an understanding of the intimate nature of our relationship to God? I mean, father's one. Can you think of another one that would reveal the intimate nature of our relationship with God?
I'm thinking the Holy Spirit is just one aspect of God, but that's one that's
Okay.
very personal.
That's personal. Why is it personal, Liz? Why? To you, why is it personal?
It's not messed up with this concept of anthropomorphizing.
Very good. Very good. Yes.
And it's accessible in a way that nothing else is.
Yes.
And I guess that you have to believe it because you can't touch it or smell it or see it.
A lot of us are uncomfortable with anthropomorphizing God, right? And that comes from our honest Reformed roots. What had happened is, in Christianity, God had become over anthropomorphized. And so it was, it was a language that the Reformation was very uncomfortable with. God being presented in all these images, which seemed to come close to idolatry, okay? So we wanted to return God, and so the spiritual aspect became extremely important to the Reformed tradition. And the idea that God, yes, we can see God reflected in human beings, but God is something way beyond that. What does it mean for us to say that we are children of God? What does that mean when we say we're children of God?
I like that one. I mean, a couple of things. I never mind that God, when I think about God, I don't like to think of a face or a person. I don't. But I do like to think about it as a father, and I have no problem with it being father or male at all, because I feel going through the Bible and the way Jesus talks, he says, Father, why is this happening? Why are these things happening to me? And I feel like, although we're not on Jesus' level, we're all learning, and we have this.
Correct.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like we're all children learning.
Children learning. So children learn. Very good. Excellent. That's excellent. Children, we are learning, right? God helps us to learn, to understand. What about other relationships of children to God? The idea that we are children to God. What sense would you get out of that? Thinking of how God is a good parent. God as a parent. And we are children of God. Besides learning, what other aspects of being children of God are important?
Total reliance.
What? Reliance, dependence. Excellent. That is such a big, huge thing that Jesus talked about constantly, was our dependence upon God. Very good.
I was just thinking that when we talk about children, our concept today of how children are part of our life is very different than what it was.
Yes.
Because children had no rights. Children had nothing to offer for anything in return. And so going to God as a child was without anything.
That's right. That's right.
There's no bargaining chip. There's no nothing.
No. And Jesus reflected that nature of God in welcoming children at a time when children they weren't property, but they were, they were not fully human until a certain age. A certain age. Then they were fully human. Up until then, they were, they were these things being around, that kind of thing. They were like, they were loved in generally, but what's odd about, and again, this comes out of the Jewish roots, what's odd in Judaism as opposed to other, a lot of the other religions of that time, in Judaism, once you were at the age of 12, you were an adult at that point. And you took on, in other words, you related to God then as an adult and not as a child. You took that responsibility. And it's hard for us to think of that young being an adult. But in the eyes of, even in our faith as Christians, and particularly in Presbyterianism, we expect, children to come forward and complete their baptism at the age, they could do that at the age of 12 and up. So that's kind of an interesting aspect of this. Our time's coming to a close, and I know we didn't get to spend enough time on this because you're talking about a subject that's so large. How do you even get there with that? But what I hope it does, and what I hope the video does, is kind of make us think about, how do we think about God? How do we do that in a time when a lot of people are saying things about God, whether it be God doesn't exist or God doesn't care. I mean, things that happen like what happened in Turkey and Syria are examples of where people go and put right up, if there's a God, why did that terrible thing happen, and challenge people who believe to answer that question. Well, I mean, terrible things have been happening since creation began, in terms of the creative process itself. And of course, the plates move and earthquakes happen because that's what the earth does, and the universe is a moving force, right? The earth moving force. So these are questions that we struggle with. But what I wanted to do in finishing up this morning, and I'm sorry that we didn't get to go as deep as we could, but like I said, our time is so short to do these classes. Go to page 6, and I want to tell you a story about this. This was, William Shatner, Captain Kirk, right? All right. Captain Kirk finally got to go to space, right? And if you're a Trekkie, you know Star Trek, or people who are into science fiction, people who are into these stories, Star Wars and all the others, and as I am, they see space as just the ultimate human frontier. Whatever's out there, whatever is out there is waiting for us to see and explore, right, and know. And it represents all scientific knowledge, and it represents all, the end point of what humanity can be. Whatever happens to the earth, we have to get out there. And so everybody was waiting to see what William Shatner would say. A lot of his fans and so forth, what he said when he came back from his little trip with Elon Musk on SpaceX, right? This is what he wrote, which is really interesting. Let's share this. I want to read this for you. Shatner wrote, "I continued my self-guided tour and turned my head to face the other direction, to stare into space. I love the mystery of the universe. I love all the questions that have come to us over thousands of years of exploration and hypothesis. Stars exploding years ago, their light traveling to us years later, black holes absorbing energy. But when I looked into space, there was no mystery, no majestic ought to behold. All I saw was death. I saw a cold, dark, black emptiness. It was unlike any blackness you can see or feel on earth. It was deep, enveloping, all-encompassing. I turned back toward the light of home. I could see the curvature of earth, the beige of the desert, the white of the clouds, and the blue of the sky. It was life, nurturing, sustaining life, Mother Earth. Everything I had thought was wrong Everything I expected to see was wrong. It was among the strongest feelings of grief I have ever encountered. The contrast between the vicious coldness of space and the warm nurturing of earth below filled me with overwhelming sadness. Every day, we are confronted with the knowledge of further destruction of earth at our hands. The extinction of animal species, of flora and fauna, things that took 5 billion years to evolve, and suddenly we will never see them again because of the interference of mankind. It filled me with dread. My trip to space was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it felt like a funeral. Remarkable statement. How do you respond to that? How do you respond to that? What do you think? Go ahead. How does it hit you?
Oh, I guess it makes me feel lucky to live on Earth. That's part of it.
Say it again.
I feel lucky to live here.
Blessed might be the word, right?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, what did he expect to see out there? All that, I guess, has been fantasized about space, right?
Well, that, and also we tend to think that heaven is way out beyond.
Yes,
that.
yeah,
And
very
yet,
good.
You know, if it's beyond space, you know, most people would, and I think that's a very common concept of heaven, that it's just above our realm.
Right.
And he didn't see anything, rosy clouds or happy things out there. So that couldn't be heaven.
But what he saw, what he emphasized, what he saw that mattered was life. Life matters. That's what he's saying. Life matters. And we as believers say that God matters. That God matters. That everything else without God is emptiness, is grief, is emptiness. Everything else is. But that God matters, life matters, that this incredible planet we live on, unlike anything else that's been seen so far. I mean, they're looking pretty deep now, right? Unlike, and I'm not saying there's not some kind of life out there, but they have not seen anything yet that comes close to comparing to, and if you read certain books about just the nature of the earth itself, it is a life-creating engine. It would be impossible without a total catastrophe to stop life being created on this earth. It's just an engine that does it. It just is a remarkable how much life there is starting below and moving up to above. It's just remarkable, this envelope. And what does that say to us about God? That God is life, that God is, and I think sometimes when I look at the universe, I think about, what if we're it? What if all that we see up there is God saying to us, here I am. This is me. Here I am. And here you are. You know, this is who I am, and I have created you to be here. You are my garden, right? That's the way I think of it. And I think, so I wonder sometimes if as far as we can stretch, we never see any other life or anything that looks like the earth. If we will be willing to say, you know, maybe we are a unique creation here. Maybe, you know, this isn't about defying the odds, but this was meant to be. Well, as believers, but it is belief. It is belief. You can't prove God. No matter how hard you try, you can't prove God. But, you know, it is, sometimes I think it's a lot easier to prove there is a God than there is to prove that there's not a God. Sometimes I think that's the case. Because there is so much ordinary we do not see or hear or know. So, and why would we expect that there'd be something so extraordinary that we do not necessarily physically see and hear and know? So anyway, those were my thoughts. I'm going to have a closing prayer. I need to get going now and get myself ready for the service. But I'm going to have a closing prayer. And I invite you to pray with me. And we'll just reflect upon these things. Next week, we're going to talk about Jesus Christ. So I believe in God the Father, maker of heaven and earth. Let's bow our heads and pray. Creator God, we are stunned by the breadth and depth of your creation. We acknowledge both our responsibility for it and our insignificance in the face of its magnificence. We give thanks, too, that in the vastness of the cosmos, each of us is known and loved by you, as a father loves his child, as a mother nourishes and cherishes the infant she bore. Stir us to respond with awe and gratitude. Grant us discernment as we seek to find our place in your plan. Amen. Thank you all. Hope to see you next week. Thank you all who are watching on the recording. If you're continue watching on the recording, that's great. And if you come to our class, that would be wonderful as well. I promise you, today we had coffee. Next week we'll have some treats as well. So that ought to bring you in, right? So there. So God bless you all, and we'll see you next week for February 19th for our study of Jesus Christ as we move to the next part of the Apostles' Creed.